So now in this next segment, what we're going to do is talk about the most important thing in music publishing, and that is your songs. And what pros look for. And when I say pro, I don't mean performing rights organization. I mean the actual pros, right? The professional A&R, publishers, et cetera. That's what we're talking about here, okay? Now, before I start real quick, I'm going to tell you a real quick story. And that is, I used to go on, to these clinics and seminars and stuff. And I used to sit there and watch, all of the A&R, sitting on their holy thrones, and, us little poor artists would go, but what are you looking for? And I remember the answers were, in many cases, lame as anything. They'd say things like, we're looking for it. And when we hear it, we just know it, and we're looking for that X factor and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to go home and write X factor, I mean, what does that do for me? So over the years, I really did a lot of research, and I found a lot of great material out there on the art of songwriting, and a lot of people that were able to conceptualize in this way that gave us musicians more. And one of the things that I really found that made a lot of sense was a guy named Ralph Murphy that was doing
Ralph's
a lot of
awesome.
research, a guy from Nashville that works at ASCAP, and he wrote this book called Murphy's Law of Songwriting. So a lot of the things that I talk about are going to be based on, essentially his work, okay? So let's get to it. Number one, structure, okay? There needs to be a balance between predictability and surprise. If things are too predictable, they're boring. If things are too surprising, they're confusing. So there needs to be a balance between predictability and surprise. And interestingly enough, the form A, B, A, B, C, B, B is that balance between predictability and surprise. And according to Ralph Murphy, is actually the form that's used the most in hit songs with, some small variations. So let's look at that. You have the verse. Right? Sounds good the first time you're hearing it, a little bit of, surprise. Then it goes to the chorus, right? The B section. Ooh, that was nice. That was a little bit of surprise. Goes back to the A section. Now that's some predictability. Now you feel where it's going. Ah, there goes the chorus. You expected that. Now all of a sudden, bam, it gives us some surprise, right? It goes into the C section. And then bam, it goes back to the chorus, the B section, and then sells it and goes to the chorus out, right? So the problem is that we keep on wanting to reinvent the wheel, right? That's too formulaic for us, and when I was in college at Berkeley, I didn't want to just follow that. I was writing forms, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, I was all over the place, But there's something to be said about this. Moving on, distinction. A distinction between your verse and the distinction between your chorus. Whether or not it's uplift, whether or not it's downlift, essentially when you're in the chorus, okay? There's nothing worse than saying, was that just the chorus?
Yeah. Did I miss that?
Yeah, when it's the hook, everybody should know it's the hook. Moving on, having a nice short intro. Depending on the tempo of the song, someone might argue that it should be no more than 12 seconds. It should get to it fast, maybe even have no intro and go straight into the verse. This ties in really nice to that phrase, get to the chorus, don't bore us.
Yeah.
Right? So that's structure. Let's move on. Lyric. Now, again, I'm going to tell a really quick story. I used to do these panels where I had people listening to music anonymously, right? So you'd have all these producers and publishers and things, and they'd listen to my clients and my students' music. There was one guy that always used to show up late, right? And this guy used to wear dark, leather jacket and dark glasses and a dark leather cap, and he also used to have this briefcase he carried with him that he never opened, so we don't even know what was in that briefcase. Scary, ominous cat. And he'd always show up a little bit late and slam the door and go, boom, and he'd go, whose song is this? And you're like, this is an anonymous thing we're doing here. And he goes, whose song is this? And then he picks someone out and goes, nobody cares what you have to say.
Jeez.
Everyone's like, oh my God. And then he'd stand back up and he goes, what matters most, and he'd smile, is how what you have to say reflects on the life of the listener. So think about that. It's important that what you're saying is important, but more importantly, it's important that that connects with your target audience, right? Because art is about communication and it needs to touch other people. And if you have to explain to me what your lyrics are about, you aren't communicating, right? So the idea here is, let's just say, for example, and I just heard this song on the way here, so I'm using this song. It's a little bit of an old song, but Christina Aguilera's song, Beautiful. You know, so you're the girl that's sitting at home. Maybe she got, you know, turned down for going to the prom, and she's sitting at home and she's eating the Haagen-Dazs and she's upset, and she's, you know, maybe people made fun of her that she wasn't invited to the prom, and then all of a sudden Christina Aguilera comes on with the lyric, you know, because you are beautiful no matter what they say, you know, and that touches that person and it connects to them and they feel that that person wrote the song for them. You know, that is the kind of connection that you want to try to get, right? So something to be said about lyrics.
Absolutely.
The other thing is about trying to paint a picture with your lyrics. So don't just, you know, write it, show it. You know, and Desmond Childs, the songwriter, used to be really, really great at this. Rather than telling you, for example, what kind of sex he is talking about, he makes you see it by saying the X in sex, you know, as in triple X, as in the X rated in sex. And right there, you get all of these images, right? There's a picture that's painted. So trying to be picturesque with your lyrics, there's also something to be said about that.
Absolutely.
And then finally, don't worry about repetition. Repetition can be good. You're hammering home the hook. You're selling the point, right?
Absolutely.
So again, listening to the classic station on the way here, AC/DC has a lyric, on the highway to hell. The next one, on the highway to hell. The next one, on the highway to hell. And then the fourth bar, on the highway to hell. Do you think they didn't know what to say? They're hammering that point home. So there's something to be said about, after the song, I should know what the song is about, right? Just, by the way, there is no right way to write a song. Just want to make that clear, but this is at least is giving you more guidance. Okay, last thing real quick, melody, right? It has to have humbug factor. That means after you listen to it, you better be able to hum it back. So the idea is to create these really tasty, like little tidbits of like tasty stuff that people can grab onto, whether or not they're riffs, whether or not they're small choruses, that people can remember. If after I hear your song, if I can't even sing back the melody, maybe that's not such a good idea. Okay, real quick, Michael, if you can tackle style, and we already talked about master quality, and maybe you can talk about anything else.
Yeah, other, you know, various things that I think apply. You know, so of course, you know, when you're writing a song, you know, whether you're the artist or not, or you're bringing in that vocalist, you know, it's really important that you have a very clear sense of what the style is of the song. You know, the style, the genre, you know, since so much of what we do on a day-to-day basis is in the sync world and film and TV, you know, a lot of that is you are satisfying a particular style need musically. You know, whether it's, you know, I'm trying to think, like, you know, a bar where you're going to maybe have sort of, you know, the typical, say, rock band or something, or, you know, it's set in another country, so you need Spanish rock, like, whatever, you know, EDM, dance, all of these things, you need to, as you produce or bring someone in to produce, have a clear sense of your melody and your lyrics should work together, but should fit comfortably within the style of what you are trying to sort of record and, you know, put in this master form that can just, you don't need to even articulate it. I guess clearly I'm having a difficult time articulating it.
And the idea is it should be, I mean, current sounding as well. In other words, you know,
absolutely.
If you write a song, you know, I mean, if you sound like, you know, let's just say Motley Crue back in 1980, you know, that might have been good for 1980, but now it's, you know, it's 2018, you know, or 2019 or 2020, whenever you guys are watching this, right? So the idea is, you know, obviously to, you know, to create music maybe that sounds like maybe Motley Crue, but the new Motley Crue, you know?
A modern spin on a classic sound.
Yeah,
you know, so much of these things are happening this today, or an amalgamation of different sort of styles. I just think it needs to be articulated without you almost even having to express it.
Yeah, and then sometimes, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is period pieces that are sometimes needed. So sometimes someone will need a song that sounds like Motley Crue in 1980.
And,
right?
you know, there actually have been some, you know, shows that are even more period, but they kind of on purpose are wanting not the period pieces, but still something that has the modern tinge to that period. You know, again, I think it's having a sense of what your target is and where it's going, whether it be radio, whether it be a film thing.
Right.
You know, always factor in the style of production into what you're doing, just as equally important as the lyric, as the melody.
Right.
You know, we did address the master quality thing, you know, in the last segment. You know, cannot stress that enough. But I think also when you're thinking about your targets, you know, one of the things that has always carried with me is years ago there was an event that happened out here in California. It doesn't happen anymore. It was a AAA radio conference, but they also brought in film and TV music supervisors into this conference. And it was a weekend, and artists would come down and perform for the radio programmers and the music supervisors. But what was really fascinating is that they would always do this panel where half the panel would be radio programmers, half the panel music supervisors, and everyone in the audience, we all had, you know, sort of these, I guess they call them market research dials, where you sort of filled out a certain survey at the beginning of, you know, your gender, your age, your occupation, etc. Everyone had these dials, and then you would listen to the song, and you would essentially rate the song on your dial from like 1 to 10 as far as usability for what you did. And what was utterly fascinating is that every single time, the songs that were the most interesting to radio programmers were the songs that were least interesting to the music supervisors.
Wow, interesting.
You know, because I had to think about it, and it's like, all right, well, if you're a radio programmer, all you have is an audio-only world where you're trying to grab the attention of the listener, you know, through audio only. The vocal needs to be out front and present. It needs to grab whether you're telling a story, you know, can draw the listener into what they're doing. But those things are also, from the film and TV perspective, the exact opposite of what they want, because songs that have the vocal so much farther out in front of the rest of the track are probably going to be songs that won't get used in the background, because that vocal is going to demand the attention away from the dialogue that might be going on, you know, or as soon as you get into specifics in a lyric, like there's not a whole lot of country and folk that really gets used in the film and TV world, because so much of those genres are story songs.
Right.
You know, and you start mentioning Susie, who gets on the train to go to this, and as soon as you mention those specifics, it's going to take away from the possibility of it being used in a film and TV setting, because you've now just limited the context in which that song can be used.
Right.
So, you know, you kind of have to think of all that stuff in mind when you're writing that lyric in the film and TV world. The more sort of universally accepted lyric that each listener can graft their own experiences and, you know, life experiences onto, I think are those songs that end up getting used the absolute most.
Right. Good stuff. So actually, let's go ahead and close this segment out by giving you guys what's called our question of the day, right? So let's talk about that real quick. So how can this book, 5-Star Music Makeover, how can this book help you with regards to improving your songs, your lyric writing, your melody writing, your style, etc. Okay, 5-Star Music Makeover. How can this book help you? Okay, we're trying to break down the basics, you guys, so that this stuff sticks. We've got some really, really cool stuff coming up. Please hang in there.
Be right back.